Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. My name is Daniel Ackerman. I'm one of the listing specialists with the Queens Home Team. If you're new to the channel, welcome and please consider subscribing to the channel. We're always posting new videos here, wonderful property tours, and lots of valuable information for buyers and sellers in the New York City area. So consider subscribing and you'll get all of the new videos that we post up. If you hit the little bell icon when you subscribe, you'll get all the notifications whenever we post something to the channel. And in this video, we are talking about something that is on a lot of people's minds, which is the market in New York City slowing down? Is the real estate market slowing down? You know, you might be a person that's been keeping up with the news regarding inflation and regarding the interest rates going up and what's happening with mortgages. And so a lot of people are wondering, is the market slowing down? What is the effect on me? How will it impact my sale? Or if you're purchasing a home, how will it impact your purchase? So we're going to cover that today and see if the market is actually slowing down and talk a little bit about what that might mean for you. Now, the way we determine if the market is slowing down is to look at the contract activity. And so you want to compare the contract activity in a given period to another period and see if there's a slowdown between the two. So what we're looking at is the contract activity from the last 3 months. So today, as I'm recording this video, is September 21st. So we're going to look at everything for the 3 months leading up to today. So June 21st to September 21st. And we'll compare that to a period earlier in the year, as well as the same period last year, to see if the market is slowing down. So first, let's take a look at the contract activity from earlier in the year. We're going to look at Queens first. We're going to talk about Queens and Manhattan in today's video. We're going to take a look at Queens first at the residential market. So this is 1 to 4 family properties in Queens. And we're going to look at what went into contract from March 1st to May 31st. And I chose that period because that correlates kind of with when the interest rates started to go up. So this is during the rise in interest rates. They started to go up right around the middle of March. And so we'll take a look at that period. So between March 1st and May 31st of 2022, there were a total of 1,801 contracts signed for residential properties in Queens. Again, this is 1 to 4 families. Now, if we look at the period from June 21st to today, September 21st, 2022, which is the most recent 3-month period, then the contract activity for 1 to 4 family properties in Queens dropped from 1,801 to 1,478. So that's a decrease of about 18% in the most recent 3 months compared to the 3 months from March 1st to May 31st. So that's a pretty sizable and meaningful drop. But is that just a seasonal change? Because, you know, New York is a seasonal market and there are swings in activity from month to month. So is that just a seasonal change? Well, we can look at the same period, so June to September of the last year, 2021, to get a sense of how we compare this year to where we were last year. So from June 21st of 2021 to September 21st of 2021, there were 1,846 contracts signed for 1 to 4 family properties in Queens. And once again, we had 1,478 this year. So that's a drop of 20% from last year. So we see a drop of about 18% from the spring, March to June, and a drop of about 20% from this period last year. So it seems pretty obvious there that there's definitely been a decline in activity for Queens residential properties. Now, what about the Queens condo and co-op market? Because the different inventory types have different markets. They have different circumstances and different dynamics. So let's take a look at those. So from March 1st to May 31st of this year in Queens, there were 1,522 contracts for condo or co-op properties. So those were all the contracts signed in that period. Now, if we look at June to September of this year, for condos and co-ops in Queens, there were 1,146. So that's a drop of almost 25%. That's 24.7% drop from the spring months. So that's, again, very substantial drop, clearly indicating some kind of a shift. But is it seasonal? Let's take a look at last year. So for the same period last year, June to September of 2021, there were 1,266 contracts signed. And once again, this year was 1,146. So that's a drop from last year of about 9%. So a drop from the spring and also a drop from last year. So it would seem to indicate that, yes, definitely the higher mortgage rates that buyers are experiencing are definitely impacting the market and leading to a slower or less contract activity. I shouldn't say a slower market, but less contract activity for sure. Now, what does this all look like in Manhattan? Let's take a look at the Manhattan numbers. So for the Manhattan market, we've put everything all together. We don't use the MLS for Manhattan because they're not a part of the MLS really, the multiple listing service. So we use a service called Urban Digs to pull stats, and they kind of pool the entire market together. So this is looking at all condos and all co-ops of all different sizes, new development and resale. And we can look at the contract activity across the entire market for different periods. So for the period of June to August, end of August, which is the last month that Urban Digs has full numbers for. So this is from June 2022 to August of 2022. We had 2,680 properties enter into contract. Okay, 2,680 for basically all of the summer months. Now, if we look at that last year, from June of 2021 through August of 2021, there were 3,904 properties that entered into contract in that same period last year. That's a drop of 31% in contract activity from last year compared to this year. So that's a sizable drop. Now, last year was exceptional in Manhattan as well as Brooklyn. You know, the COVID restrictions were easing off. The market was opening back up, and it was a historic year in terms of contract activity. Broke all kinds of records that were 30 years old or more. So it was definitely an outlier of a year in terms of contract activity. Nevertheless, we do see a really substantial drop, 31%. Now, additionally, in Manhattan, contract activity has been falling every month since March. Now, that's not completely out of the norm. In fact, if you look historically back every year, there's always a drop from March until September, October, and then it really quiets down over the holiday months. So that in itself is not exceptional. It's not strange. We always see a drop in the Manhattan market in contract activity from March moving forward. But what is different is that the drop has been much more precipitous this year. The downward slope is a lot sharper. So usually it just tails off. You know, you'll see March, April, May kind of be the peak of contract activity, and then the contract activity will taper off gradually all the way through until the season picks up again the following February or so. But this year, what you see is a really, really steep downturn starting in about April or June, which again correlates with when mortgage rates were rising and impacting buyers. Another interesting thing to note about contract activity in Manhattan is that it's below the historical average for the first time since November 2020. So almost 2 full years. And this is the first time in that almost 2-year period that the contract activity has actually dipped below the historical average for the number of contracts. So all of this seems to indicate that the market is definitely seeing less contract activity and is slowing down in terms of buyers making offers and entering into contract with sellers. But what does that really mean for you as a seller or a buyer? Let's look at sellers first. So if you're a seller, you might be wondering, well, is this going to impact the value of my property? Is my property worth less? The answer is yes and no. Usually there's a lag time between a drop in contract activity before it actually starts impacting prices. In fact, what you're seeing across the country is that contract activity is dropping, but housing prices are still stubbornly high. I saw a headline recently that indicated that home prices in the greater New York City area had dropped a modest 2.5%, which is not a substantial drop. It's worth noting, but it's a modest drop. However, if you look at just Manhattan prices have dropped about 7%. So it is starting to take hold, but it hasn't been sort of a catastrophic drop in prices. And a lot of that is seasonal anyway, because prices tend to drop a little bit, after the summer months. So it hasn't really had a huge impact on prices for sellers yet, but it probably will have an impact moving forward as things continue to slow. As it becomes more and more difficult to find buyers, sellers will be forced to price more attractively, more conservatively, in order to really stand out from the competition and find their buyer in a suitable amount of time. The same thing goes for sellers in Queens. Now, in Queens, the residential market hasn't seemed to be impacted too much yet. Anecdotally, we're a very active listing team, and we have had listings, especially on the residential side, the 1 to 4 family side, that are getting strong activity, lots of offers, sometimes multiple offers, full ask or close to it, sometimes above full asking price. So as long as we price carefully and in line with what the market is doing, the activity is still pretty strong for the residential market. But how long that will last, nobody knows. And this is kind of reaching into, we are going to be approaching the holiday season here very, very soon. So that will definitely slow things down. In addition, interest rates just keep climbing. Today, September 21st, the Fed just announced another 0.75% increase. The 10-year Treasury jumped up, which will definitely impact mortgage rates as they generally track with the 10-year Treasury. So mortgage rates continue to go up. Buyers continue to feel the pinch. Sellers will feel that impact as well. Will prices drop? Most likely. We're not fortune tellers, but we've seen this kind of thing before, and most likely they will drop. How much is anybody's guess, but it's something to be aware of. And if you're thinking of putting your home on the market and up for sale in the near future, then you probably want to think of being ahead of that downward curve. So if prices are here, you probably want to price down here so that the curve comes and meets you. Whereas if you're up here and prices are down here and falling away, the market is dropping away from you, and you have a very, very difficult time catching up to it. So price ahead of that curve, price conservatively, and you should be okay. Now, what about for buyers? Buyers, you're feeling the pinch in terms of mortgage rates. Mortgage rates have now hit about 6%, maybe even a touch over 6%, and that's definitely impacting your monthly payment. Now, if you heard our recent podcast with George and Abby talking about this, then they were very clear in saying that, you can still buy. You're not priced out of the market. It may change your criteria. It may change where you're looking or what kind of a property you're looking for, but you can still make this happen. Pay attention to what your monthly payment is going to be. As long as you can afford the monthly payment, you can make that purchase. So it's not a game ender that mortgage rates are high. It's just going to impact what you can buy, and you have to be extra careful as far as your affordability. Really make sure that you can afford those monthly payments before you start making that offer. The last thing you want to do is enter into contract, and then if the interest rate ticks up just a little bit and it ruins your monthly affordability, now you can't close on that property. So just be very careful as a buyer, and we have wonderful buyer's agents on the team that can help guide you and give you advice on what kind of a property you should be looking for, and when you should be doing things like locking your rate, how much padding to give yourself so that you don't run into any unforeseen problems. So the upshot of all of this, the big takeaway is that whether you are a seller or a buyer and you need to buy or sell a home in the next 6 months, you can make that happen. It just may mean that you've got to adjust your parameters a little bit and just be a little bit realistic about what the market is offering you, and be sensitive to that and responsive to that, because ultimately none of us controls the market. We're all at the mercy of the market. The only thing we can control is the choices that we make and how we position ourselves in that market to make sure that we succeed. And that's our job as real estate experts, as local economists. We're here to guide you, give you the advice that you need on pricing your home or on budgeting for your purchase so that you can make your dreams come true. So that pretty much wraps up the video. We're always here to help. If you liked this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have questions, comments, make sure to leave them in the comments below. We love getting your questions or comments. You can always reach out to us at the contact information in the description below. And if you want to see more content like this and you want to keep up to date on what's going on in the market or see our cool property tours, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you hit the bell icon, you'll get notifications of all of our new videos as they're put up. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you again in another video.